and welcome to this very impromptu episode of the State of Education presented by One Room Education. My name's Katie, and we are on a mission to empower parents, students, and educators to take back control of their education to help foster the most free and prosperous generation yet. Today, I have the distinct honor of hosting Dr. Mary Cochran again, and really, I was a support because Mary was gonna do her own live stream and it just kind of died on her. And I was like, I got you, girl. We're both educators, we're both working on helping people understand the education system and assessment specifically when we're talking about Mary. So it's all right. Let's do this. Screw it. It doesn't matter if I'm sick or I have no makeup on or if my husband's putting the dishes away behind me and you can probably hear it. Totally fine. We got this. Let's roll with it.
Yeah, well, Super
So,
K is saving my day, so I appreciate it so much, so much. Yeah, we was gonna set up my live Q&A and wasn't able to do it. I'm actually in a hotel room in Chicago, and so I'm out and about and traveling, and so really appreciate you you saving my bacon, and so we could get the answer out to the question that was posed. From one of my group, and I want to make sure to get this information out because I think it's a hot topic, and I think people need to be informed.
awesome. So, your group, tell
Yes.
people what that means.
Yeah, so I just started a private Facebook group, Compassionate Assessment Network, and I share exclusive content there specifically around compassionate assessment. And every Tuesday we'll be doing a Q&A, which after tonight we'll see might be doing it with you. We'll see how fun this is, but yeah, this that's just ask me anything about assessment Q&A on Tuesday nights. And if you want to join the group, you can look me up on Facebook, Mary Estelle Cochran, or you'll see on my banner how to join, or you can go to Metamure Educational Measurement. That's METIMUR Facebook page, and you'll also see how to join our Compassionate Assessment Network. And that is my group. And so, looking forward to providing a lot of really great information for folks of how to shift how we work with assessment in our schools across the nation. That's what we're working towards. So the Q&A, I had
Love it.
this question come up this week, and actually I think some of your folks might be really interested in this, Katie. The question was, all right, so we're hearing rumbling, this comes up every once in a while, but hearing rumbling about maybe just getting rid of the federal Department of Education. And so
Yes.
uh, if we do that, then what might happen to assessment? So that's what I want to answer tonight, if that sounds good to you.
Sounds great to me because anyone that is new to the state of education, I'm not a huge fan of the federal Department of Education, especially them being essentially a bank for federal student loans and all of that stuff. It gets murky. So like constitutionality and stuff like that. You and I have discussed that a little bit privately. And friends don't always have to agree on everything, and it's okay. But I think you're going to clear up a lot of questions about what the federal Department of Education actually does when it comes specifically to assessment,
Yeah.
because the number one thing that I hear as a complaint for the federal Department of Education outside of the whole like student loan issues, right? Federally guaranteed student loans and the inflation of post secondary educational tuition and stuff like that. Outside of that, the number one thing I hear is, why do they require our kids to take so many tests? The federal Department of Education shouldn't require our kids to take so many tests. And you and I have talked a little bit about the difference between state required testing for Common Core. People don't understand that Common Core is a coalition of governors that came together enough that it became pretty much national, but that's a coalition of governors, not a
It was,
federal
yeah,
mandate.
that was a state
And
movement by states to build standards. And
mhm,
so, and at the end of the day, even though Common Core is not quite, it's related, but it is separate and different
Mhm,
than the U.S. Department of Education's role in the large in the assessments.
mhm,
It's related, but it is separate because
mhm,
that was a state led effort because they figured out, hey, we're all doing the same work of building these high quality standards across kindergarten through 12th grade in the core content areas. Then why don't we work together? And it's actually only English language arts and mathematics.
mhm,
So like science is a separate set of standards, and then history, social studies, and then all of the other subjects, they're not a part of that. It's really
mhm.
only English language arts and mathematics. Now, even though that, and this is not the question I was going to answer, but I'm going to answer your
That's
question
okay.
anyway. um, Even though I think there's a lot of misnomers and misunderstandings because even though there was a collaborative effort in the drafting of the original Common Core state standards in English language arts and mathematics, every single state still maintained their own process and procedures for adopting what their standards will be for public education. So that did not supersede in any way each state's process of adopting standards. And so
Mhm,
today, even though you have a number of states across the US who have adopted Common Core, they've also tweaked them a little bit. So you do see some differences across the states as far as uh, kind of some standards that get moved across grades, maybe they get combined. And there's a number of states who have adopted kind of their state standards. And like a pretty significant majority of it is Common Core, derived from the Common Core state standards for ELA and mathematics. And the
mhm,
reason for that really comes back to look, all the states were doing the same work. And it's very intensive and resource intensive and expensive work to do. And so it saved the states a lot of money to work together. So
mhm,
um, that was not, it was really um, uh, it was a misnomer. That it was driven by the U.S. Department of Education. They actually were very careful to stay separate and from the Common Core development, and it's totally out of their hands in terms of
mhm.
whether or not the states would actually adopt those standards. So um, anyone who doesn't know what the content standards are in their state, go to your state Department of Education website, and all of the adopted standards are published publicly for you to see what is supposed to be taught in every content area and grade level uh, for the adopted standards. And you'll also find the states have a lot more adopted standards than just English language arts and mathematics. There's adopted standards in science, there's adopted standards in social science and history,
Mhm.
there's adopted standards for physical education, for you've got some of the additional classes around uh, like uh,
I know
data science and
I know
computer
Pennsylvania has, like,
science.
arts and music.
Yes, there's music
It's
standards, art
also
standards,
mhm,
performance. It's they kind of put it together. It's like visual and performing arts standards, right? That's
yeah.
often under that umbrella.
Mhm,
So, it's a little it's totally driven by the states. One, and under the purview of each state department of education. So,
mhm,
yeah. So when anyone's like wondering or not sure, well, what are they supposed to be learning? Go to your state website. All of the adopted standards have to be made publicly available, and you'll find them. You'll find them
mhm.
after a little digging. And it's a government website, right? Like, you
Which
know,
means it's hard to navigate for those of you who don't know what that means.
they can
I
be. They can be
I
really
know
hard to
for,
navigate. So,
s
Google's your friend, but make sure you're looking at your state.
yeah, and I'm certified in Pennsylvania, so I can speak to that system, and they had a specific system, it was called SAS, SAS. I forget what it stood for. Um, and that was something that as an educator, you had a easier search engine that you could use to
Mm.
search the standards, but it's accessible to all people living in the state for anybody that wants to do any sort of research. So, especially if you are a homeschooler, I think Ohio's the same way. They have like a standard area that you can, like a database that you can search. So if you're doing something and you want to check like what standards it would be aligned with, you can just type in what the topic is that you're covering, and it'll give you a whole bunch of standards, and you're going to have to look through to figure out what that is. But I actually did, this is not on topic and I'm sorry. But I actually did a lesson, and it was a review game that I was doing whenever I was student teaching. And it had 68 standards that it aligned with. And
Mm.
that day, my oversight person for the college was there, and he was like, "There's no way." I was like, "Feel free to look through them." I was like, it's a game, so it's cooperation and leadership. It's
Right. No, that's a great example of the other kinds of standards that states have
Mhm,
adopted: cooperation, leadership,
mhm.
yeah, 21st century skills, right? Like, yeah, go
A
ahead.
lot of them have like social emotional standards now too that you
They're
can.
looking at and how to adopt them, how to use them. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm. A
so
lot
they
of
have
states
like
are
real
looking at that.
basic, especially for the like K through second or third
Yeah, the early
usually.
learners. Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah, they'll have
kindergarten
them for
through
those.
second, third grade.
So, mhm. So it was like game design and develop like some kind of computer design stuff, plus all the history and economics and all that stuff. And he was like, he sat there for 3 hours going through every single one of those standards. And at the end, I was like, how'd it go? And he was like, I don't know how you found all of those standards. I was like, you told me to search. So that's what I
So
did.
I searched. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's really, it's actually, there's so much information out there publicly that
Mhm,
I think people just aren't aware of.
mhm.
And so, yeah,
And that was
yeah.
back in 2009. Yeah, that was back in 2009, and there's way more, it's way easier now. But anyways, so so Common Core states is the main takeaway from that whole thing.
Yeah, and
And
the
that,
standards are adopted by each state. So,
yeah,
you
and
know,
and some states do require you as a homeschooler to associate your curriculum with certain standards per grade level. So it's really important to know where to find that stuff depending on what state you live in, depending on what the homeschooling laws are. So just throwing that out there. If you want help finding that stuff, I do walk you through all of that in the Foundations for Homeschool Mastery coaching program that I have. It's a 12-week coaching program where I walk you through a 55 plus page resource manual that I made. And whenever you leave, you have literally built an entire homeschool. And I make sure that you have all the information that you need to be successful for yourself and your students. So there's a resource for you. You can head over to one-roomeducation.com, the word one, ONE-roomeducation.com, and click the homeschooler resources button to check out some of the benefits of that and sign up if you are so inclined. So let's go ahead and pivot to the federal that was the actual point of this
yeah,
live.
but hey,
Um,
when you help me out, man, I I'm happy for you to plug your coaching. I think it's really exciting. Because I have watched you talk to parents who are currently homeschooling, and just the level of encouragement, and how you are so focused on how to empower them and to really feel more confident, and 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 engage with their kids in a way that they know is for the best for their kids, and that's why they're pursuing homeschooling anyway. Like, now I would totally support anybody working with you who is interested in homeschooling their kids, because I've seen you in action. And so I'm
thank
happy for you
you.
to make the plug, and I'm making it for you. So,
Thank you.
your
That's very
super
sweet.
case helping me out, I help you out.
I used to have a
But
cape.
just know that. But yeah, let's talk about the question at hand because this has actually been
Yes.
asked for a few times now.
So
Uh,
the
yeah,
federal assessment.
yes,
Everyone thinks of No Child Left Behind, NCLB of 2001. We hated it. It sucked. There was negligible results, negligible improvements from what I, as a layperson, can understand the numbers telling me. So they rebranded it as what is it?
yeah.
Every
The
Student
Every Student
Succeeds.
Succeeds Act. It was
Hmm.
signed into law by President Obama in 2015,
And it just
and
keeps getting
that
renewed.
what that did was, well, it replaced and updated the
Okay.
2002 No Child Left Behind Act, the NCLB that you were
Hmm.
mentioning, um, and that was even a reauthorization. NCLB was a reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Act of 1965. And so each time it is reauthorized or renewed or rebranded, there are some changes. Okay, so where we stand right now. Okay,
Hmm.
and the reason why I'm bringing that particular act up is because that is what governs the assessment and accountability pieces. And so to answer the question right at hand was, well, what happens to assessment if the US Department of Education is abolished? Like what might happen to assessment? They're gone, right? And the short answer is no, that it doesn't get rid of the assessment. So it's a little bit more nuanced than that. So it's a great question, and I think it's worth exploring because now this is totally and separate from anything else that they do. I'm only focusing on assessment in
Hmm.
K 12 education. So um, like the student loans and all that kind of stuff. I'm not touching any of that. Just talking about assessment. So let's talk about what it is, the laws that governs the assessments requires it right now. Um, so so it's ESSA, or the Every Student Succeeds Act, right? Um, that law still required the states to have some sort of measure on student progress. In the law, it says reading, math, and science. Okay, that's where we get these tests of English language arts and mathematics in grades 3 through 8 and once in high school, and then science is required to be tested once in elementary, once in middle, and once in high school. Okay, they had different origins. That's why they have different grade spans and whatnot.
So that's
There's
federal.
That's federal. This is the
Okay.
federal law.
Okay.
Also, what's a part of that is the requirement for an English language proficiency test for students who are learning English, and that is K through 12. That's
Okay.
also a part of
Can you
this law.
explain that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. So as a part of Title One, which is kind of much bigger than just education, but a part of Title One is ensuring that students in public education have access to English language development, instruction, and resources and whatnot. And so, as a part of that process, because there are English language development standards, another set of standards that are adopted by states. Um, there's an assessment that goes along with it that helps to do two things, two primary purposes. The English language proficiency tests that are given every single year do two primary things. One, it is determining whether or not the student stays in the supplemental instructional program of English language proficiency or development, ELD sometimes might be, there's some different acronyms that are used, but it's all English language development. Whether or not they stay in the program or they're exited out, and then they are monitored. Their academic progress is supposed to be monitored for a couple years after that.
So these
Um,
are English language learners specifically that we're talking
Correct,
about.
correct.
Okay.
So English might be their second or their fifth language.
Hmm.
It really runs the gambit. These are students that are born in the United States to non primary English speaking parents. These are students that come to the United States as teenagers, as refugees. Anything in between that you can
Okay.
think of.
Gotcha.
And um, so there's also an aspect of the Every Student Succeeds Act that requires an English language proficiency test from get grades kindergarten through 12th grade, because you see that spans all grades, language development. And
So
so
wait, so they
mhm,
need one in each of those grade levels. They
mhm.
get that. Now is that only for just clarifying, is that only
Mhm.
for the people enrolled in that program then?
Yes, it's only
Okay.
for students that qualify for English language development services.
Okay, cool.
But this is a part of the same law. Okay.
Mhm.
So the other part of the law is so for all of the students who the law specifically says all students, and all means all. So that includes the students that have the most severe cognitive disabilities. There's also alternate tests for those students in all of those subjects: English language arts, mathematics, science. Okay. There's also been a big developments in the field of English alternate English language proficiency tests. The students that are we call it dual identified or multiple identified, where they're actually getting services for different things, special education services and also English language development services. And so but the goal is it's not just about testing the kids so much as making sure that all students are getting a high quality education. And this is the accountability piece to say, hey, if they're getting access to this education, we should see it show up in some sort of academic assessment. That's the logic here.
Right, and that was something that whenever you and I started talking, you explained to me because I was like, "I don't understand the point of these. Like, if we're already testing a state level, why do we need to test at a national level? Why is there, like, double things? I don't get it." And you broke everything down really well, um, for
So
me.
yeah, so just what you just said right there, right? So what
Mhm,
I'm talking about, while it is a national level law
mhm,
that requires the states to meet certain criteria, they have to do certain things like give these tests
mhm,
to receive federal funds.
mhm,
Okay, so there's a an exchange here, right?
mhm,
Um, you don't have to give these tests if you're not accepting the federal funds, right?
mhm.
Um, but there are also some other laws that ensure that like English language development is happening, special education services are being provided. There are other laws that interact, and so what has happened now, we're still talking though, even though it's a federal law, we're still
Mhm.
talking about state tests because it is this responsibility of the state to create, administer, score, report, do all of these things because this is one of the measures that is supposed to contribute to the accountability system that is also required by the Every Student Succeeds Act. Okay.
Can you dive into that a little
Yeah,
bit? Like,
yeah,
what is the accountability thing? Like, I know what you're talking about,
yeah.
but I do wanna let people know, like, if you're confused, don't worry because I have been in education as a professional for, oh my god, like 15, oh my gosh, going on
It adds
Jesus,
up fast, right?
going on 15 years now, as a professional educator, and I through my discussions with Mary, I've been like, I didn't understand shiz
Well,
about the system.
you're not really taught about it, right? And so because to think of it as like nesting Russian dolls, right? Each doll is unique, is complete unto itself, but it's placed inside of a larger doll. So if we think about it this way, there's the federal laws, right? And that's kind of the biggest doll because it affects the most students, right? And then inside of that, you're also going to have the state rules. So let's I'm going to stick with ESSA for a second here and talk a little bit more about what the accountability system is.
Mhm,
So um, now this didn't start with ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act. This was a part of the No Child Left Behind Act. Okay. But what ESSA did do was allow the states a little bit more freedom in the variety of indicators that they included in their accountability system to measure student success. So you've got these academic assessments in English language arts, mathematics, science. You have also what ESSA allowed was things like graduation rates, attendance, measures of college and career readiness. Okay, whether it's like ACT test or SAT test participation, or some states collect if the students apply for colleges, right? So they define them in different ways. And this accountability system is supposed to hold, here's the big thing here, guys. It's supposed to hold the system accountable. It's supposed to hold the schools and districts and the other educational institutions like county offices of education that are providing services to districts, right? But ultimately, it comes down to the school level. This is holding the schools accountable for delivering a high quality education to their students. That's who's supposed to be accountable here, not the individual kiddos. This is for the schools. This is supposed to inform the system so that if you have schools who are struggling, the state can identify that school and then provide additional resources. This is a way to allocate additional supports and additional resources to help those schools that are struggling to meet the needs of their community. So
Mhm.
so that's why this accountability system is there, right? Now, who has the ultimate power here, guys? It's still the state, because they're the ones that are creating the accountability system. Yes, the US Department of Ed does review it, and I'll talk about that more in a moment. They have to
Thank you.
review and approve it. Okay. They do have to, that they review and approve it to make sure it meets the law, the requirements, right? But it's the state that designs it. It's the state that does all the calculations, they do all the reporting. They provide the school reports. So if anybody's looked at a report, like a school score report card or scorecard, a school scorecard, they're called different things in different places across the U.S.
We have blue ribbon schools.
Well, that's something slightly different too, but um, that's a rating, right?
Mhm.
But every school has a public facing report card that is a result of this statewide accountability system that is supposed to give an indication of how well that school is ensuring that all of their students are receiving a high quality education, and closing achievement gaps between students, groups of students. So that's what the system was supposed to do. Okay. Now, how it kind of comes out, there's some other pieces here. So you might hear at the local, you might hear about like local plans, local funding plans, school site council plans,
Mhm.
things like that. That is the school's plan to address whatever need they've identified through this accountability system and anything else that they've added locally. So, one of the things actually in the federal law is it encourages schools and districts to involve stakeholders like parents and teachers and community leaders in the decision making at the local level of how they're going to make school improvement.
Okay, so unpack that a little bit. How would that work?
Well, the way it works at a lot of schools across the US is that they have like a school site council that might have not just parents, might have community members, might have um, like business owners and things like that on that school site council, where they go over the school improvement plan for the school for that coming year. And the school site council is the one that actually approves it. So that happens in a number of states across the US.
So would they, just to give context, would they work with like the school board to implement that plan,
Yeah,
or is
and
it
this
just kind of like PA, like they give suggestions?
Yeah, I know the school board definitely has a part to play in this. They, depending upon the local rules and regulations, some school boards, which are typically at that kind of next level up, that district level,
Mhm.
depending on their local rules and regulations, they might actually have to approve the school specific improvement plans. Maybe they don't. Maybe they go to school site level jurisdiction, but there's tiers and layers of decision makers and decision making bodies. Okay, so why it why is this so convoluted? Okay, because that's a big question here,
That's everyone's question.
right? It's
Why is the education system so screwed up in America? Go.
well, okay, well that's a different question, But why is the system of decision making so convoluted? And why is it this like nested doll kind of design?
Mhm.
It's because the vast majority of the power actually lies in the hands of the local entities. They hold a lot of power, and they hold power within the rules and regulations that are set out by the next entity up, which is typically the state Department of Education. And then they hold the most power in that state. And then the federal government came in, particularly with the Elementary and Secondary Act of 1965, and said, okay, we're going to add some of these other additional requirements that's going to be required for all states, because we're seeing really big differences in what the states are doing. And so, what we want to do is encourage the best practices we're seeing in some states, but not in other states. And we want to rise all tides. Okay. So, you see this cycle playing out over and over and over again, where
So
the
that was
local
the initial point,
jurisdictions,
was
mhm,
to take the best of each state and encourage the implementation of that
yeah,
across states.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the and anytime ever working with anyone at any level, whether it's a district level, state level, or on the federal level, they really want what's best for kids. We just have different ideas of how we get there, you know, and unfortunately, so much of what has been required here to hold the systems accountable has been thrown onto the shoulders of the students.
Mhm.
And now it's the student that we're holding accountable, instead of the system that is creating or limiting the opportunities for that student to learn around them. Do you see what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
when I have talked with educators across the country, one consistent theme I see over and over and over again is that folks don't necessarily know what rule is a local rule or regulation that is governed by their school board at the district level, what is a state level rule or regulation that is governed by the state board of education, and what's a federal rule. Okay. Now, what has happened with assessment? So I'm going to go back to the original question. If we got rid of the US Department of Ed, what happens to assessment? Well, we'd have to figure out like what happens to the laws, right? But there are some things that the US Department of Ed does to support states around assessment that are actually really important. And without that department, these things would go away. One is called peer review. Now, what this is every state, whenever they change their tests or make any significant change or make a new test of these required tests, they have to provide the technical quality information. It's literally hundreds and hundreds of pages of the statistical technical quality of this test, because it's an instrument, guys. We're measuring something. It's a measurement instrument. And so there are ways to determine whether or not it is a quality instrument. And that documentation is submitted to the State Department or the Federal Department of Education, to their Assessment Accountability Department, kind of department, right? It's kind of a smaller group,
Mhm.
and then they pull together experts in assessment and accountability measures, these statisticians across the country, and they have peers look at this documentation and say, hey, we see this is here. This is great. There's all these criteria it has to have to ensure that it is a highly reliable and valid instrument, that it measures what it's saying that it's intended to measure, and that it's going to continue to produce results that are comparable year over year, right? It's reliable. It's doing what it said it's do. It's measuring what it says it's measuring in a way that is consistent and reliable year over year.
Mhm.
Okay. Say, hey, yeah, we see all this evidence, but I don't see this. Maybe you need more evidence here, or have you guys thought about this? And it's an opportunity to provide third party oversight, um, to ensure that what the states are putting out is a quality test. Now, what does not go through that process is anything that's like school districts are just buying off the shelf from vendors, curriculum
Those are so
providers, and
bad
stuff like
too.
that. Well, let me. Well, and this is, and here's how you see it. Okay, on your
Mhm.
end. Okay, as a like as an educator, you saw it this way, or as a parent, I see it this way.
Mhm.
Um, the the additional tests that are added at the local level, they give lots and lots and lots of detailed information off of these short tests, right?
Mhm.
And then they take this long test at the end of the year and they have some high level results, right?
Mhm.
Okay. That's a result of the fact that there are people that are overseeing these large statewide end of year summative tests and saying, hey, this is what you can reasonably say based off these results about this student's academic achievement.
Mhm.
There is no third party oversight with the stuff that the school districts or schools are buying. There's
Right.
you don't they don't go to peer review like that.
Right. And that's the
Uh,
thing. Like, I, as a classroom teacher and as a homeschool mom, so for those of you who don't know, I'm a second generation homeschool mom and a certified secondary social studies educator. So I get it from all sides. Plus, I'm friends with Mary. So I'm just like, why? But but one of the things very rarely, and it was like if I was sick, I would assign something from the book or give out one of the resources that came with the curriculum for the school. Typically, it was very surface level, very shallow information on the topics, especially as social studies history teachers. You and I both know it's names, dates, places. Like that's it. um
there's some good resources out there though. So, there
there
are
are,
some.
but
There are some, but there's some that they have very they provide some sweeping statements about what a student can knows and can do with
mhm,
very few questions on a test that's would never fly with a statewide test because of that federal peer review oversight would say
mhm.
no, this isn't a reasonable assumption or conclusion to
I
make.
see that a lot with AP curriculum.
So
Uh,
AP is a little different, and I'll tell you why AP is different.
mhm,
Um, so AP is separate and outside of any required, you know,
standard.
assessment.
Yeah.
Um, this is not a part of, you know, there's no, federal oversight there. So what
Mhm,
there some states though have codified rules and they say that students need to attempt something. There's some states that kind of played with that through different pathways toward graduation where they have to attempt one
mhm,
AP test. But AP is a part of an internationally delivered
mhm,
program that came out of the idea of having preparatory prep high schools, right,
mhm,
that were delivering college level experiences to students in high school. There's also uh, from my perspective, you can't say AP without also like acknowledging International Baccalaureate. That's
mhm,
IB. That's the international. Uh, also had more to do with like inter- international schools across the world serving U.S. Citizens,
mhm,
students of U.S. citizens, and so they were looking to kind of standardize what those students were experiencing, and the way they did standardized it and to maintain
mhm,
their accountability was to have a test, right? So
mhm,
that's why these things go hand in hand,
mhm,
um, because it's like a certification test.
mhm,
you know, did you really take US AP history? Okay, well, we're going to certify that by giving you a US, AP test. And if you pass, then you might get credit for that in
mhm,
college. You might not, depending on how your score is. But that is separate and different. Now, the thing is, going back to the question though, okay? Going back to the question, well, what would happen to assessments if we abolished the US Department of Education? Um, there's still a bunch of rules, regulations, and laws that have been adopted at the state level that require tests over and above what the US Department of Education is overseeing. And so that's why the tests wouldn't go away because that's not where all of the rules regulations come from that require these tests. There's also the state level tests, and that's where you get things like tests in kindergarten, tests in kindergarten, first and second grade for ELA and mathematics. You get social studies and history tests, civics tests. Those are all coming from state laws and regulations. and the U.S. Department of Ed doesn't have any purview over those. Okay, so it's just kind of a matter of taking a look at what's happening. If you're looking around and you're saying, okay, as a homeschool parent, what's required of me by my state? Okay, as a parent that my student is at a private school, what is required by the state, because they're the ones that determine, what private schools require, and then or the public school, right? What's required by the state, and then everybody asks, okay, now what's at the local level? Okay, because for every single one of those situations, you're going to have different requirements that um, are require different tests that are enforced at the local level. So, on top of and over and above what the federal requirements are and what the state requirements are, you also have that local level. And to parse out where that rule comes from takes some digging, it takes some document searching, it takes some focused learning to know at, in my town or in my part of my town, right? My student is going to see these tests every quarter because it's required by the district. They're going to see these tests every week because it's required by the principal. They're going to see this test at the end of the year because it's required by the states and by federal law.
Okay.
That's why there's so much, because you've got, again, that nesting doll thing, right?
Mm.
Every layer is adding their own requirements. And
And this
so,
is above
yeah.
and beyond what is general classroom work. So that the
Oh, yeah.
teacher
Yeah.
assigns as benchmarking.
Yeah.
So just throwing that out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Which is why, we're forgetting that, and like, there's a lot, there's so much value to, and, I don't, I want to help teachers really understand, like, how to make in their classroom all of this work. And so I'm working on pulling together um, a master class on compassionate classroom assessment. So I'll be starting that
Ooh.
in January.
Do I get a
But
sneaky peek?
yeah, yeah, I'll tell you
Yes.
sneak peeks. I'll tell you right now. Uh, I'm talking a lot about what doesn't look or feel like a test. I'll tell you, because assessment's a process.
It
It's not
truly
a
is.
test as an event. Okay, we end up talking about the tests all the time, but assessment's a process. A test is an event. I'm talking more about the process and um, how do we ensure that we're encouraging our kids and using that process for growth, self-reflection, goal setting,
Mhm.
and inspiring kids, and also inspiring our teachers again, right? So they feel comfortable and confident that they know where their kids are at, and they have information to back up the decisions that they're making on a day in and day out basis. So
Mhm.
yeah, I'm really looking forward to offering that to folks. A compassionate classroom assessment masterclass. We're going to do it.
I'm so
We're going to go
excited for
deep
that.
real quick, 4 weeks, and get people to start trying out stuff in their classroom and shifting their practice right away. Um,
I love
so
that so
yeah, I mean,
much.
me. I just start talking and probably haven't provided as clear and coherent of a response.
No,
Um,
you're fine.
but
So,
we would lose some pretty valuable things that people don't realize are happening without the U.S. Department of Ed, particularly
mm,
around assessment. There's also they also offer competitive grants for state assessments, and
how does
those,
what is that and how does that work?
yeah. So um, pretty much every year they open it up for proposals from state departments for a variety of things. They have priorities, but the intention is to enhance the quality of those assessment instruments and the assessment systems that states are using, and it helps fund those efforts by states. So it is a grant that they have to report out. They have a plan. They have, the proposal is essentially the application, and proposal is essentially the plan, and then
Mhm.
um, of how they're going to measure academic achievement, um, and how they're going to use it in their accountability system, and what's new and different, and why is this an improvement. And those grants have been a catalyst for improvements in large scale assessment for decades. And
Mm.
that would it's a huge benefit to the states, because then it helps the state make reality the more innovative approaches in assessment, um, without spending state dollars for that.
Mhm.
So that's what the competitive grant is, and it goes to the state departments. The I was when I worked in the Oregon Department of Education. Uh, we were the fiscal agent responsible for the grant that started the English language proficiency assessment for the 21st century, called ELPA 21.
Mhm.
And now that is used by states across the US. And it wouldn't have existed without the competitive grant for state assessments the department gives.
Yeah. And I think that that's one of the things that one of the main takeaways I would like people to have. So, if you listen to the State of Education podcast at all, you know I'm not a super big fan of the Federal Department of Education for a lot of reasons, um, which you can go back and listen to other episodes to find those out because that's not the point of this episode. However, the Federal Department of Education can facilitate cooperation between the states. So it can be like a mediator or a facilitator.
Well,
So
and definitely a way to encourage and to help um, provide a financial support for collaboration in a way that
mhm,
help the states help each other improve their practice. And
mhm,
the competitive grants for state assessments, a lot of them are states collaborating with each other to
mhm,
do something together. So um, the ELPA 21 example from years ago that I was involved with directly, like that was
mhm,
not just Oregon involved in that. There was a lot of states that were collaborating. And when you bring the folks together across states and they share what they're doing and what's working, it helps spread the information. It helps inspire new things and change, and that is positive, that impacts the kids across the whole state. And now, but it's government, so it's incremental, and you see the changes in kind of different ways, and they take a long time to make those changes. But there's some of that's by design. If we were just radically changing things year over year, then we wouldn't be able to see if there's any improvement, and that's way too
mhm,
much change for people. So um,
right.
there is some thought behind the timelines here,
Mhm,
but and I'm also talking about, one office within the department
mhm,
that is largely responsible for this work. It's a small but mighty office that work with assessment and accountability.
mhm,
And I know they're painted as the bad guys for in a lot of ways. But unfortunately, I think that's really short sighted, and it's just people just don't understand, and placing the responsibility not where it belongs. Right?
mhm,
It's not in the lap of the kids. Um, we don't do it just because the feds say we have to.
mhm,
There were some very thoughtful and purposeful decisions here of why we collect this information, and and I truly do believe that without the information, we're in a worse position. I do think that
mhm,
we can handle it much better.
mhm.
So that's what I'm trying to help, right?
Yeah.
Inform people, share the information, just just shed light on, like, why are we even doing all of this? I mean, you and I have talked about this offline. I mean, I was a teacher who was totally disillusioned by all of the stupid accountability stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I need to change this. Like, people are using assessments as weapons. This needs to change, right? And so
Mhm,
instead of fighting it from the outside, I said, I'm going to learn more because there's got to be a reason. And I've worked to change from the inside. And
mhm,
I found myself as an assessment professional, and um, really working toward improving how we use these tools
mhm,
for the better, to help kids, to help teachers, to help school and district leaders make better decisions. Um, so yeah, so I mean, it's complicated as far as like the role that the U.S. Department of Ed plays in assessment. But I just hope that people take away from this that the states have a way larger role here. Um, and there's a lot codified into state law, regulation, and administrative rules, depending on education falls in that state. And state boards of education have quite a bit of power, some more states than other, depending on how they're organized, over assessment. And they're the ones that really are governing what's happening at the local level to a certain extent. And the rest of it's governed by your local organizations, your school districts, school boards,
Mhm.
um, and even school level decision making bodies like school site councils, depending on the state you're in. They have a little bit different names. So
Mhm.
so yeah, get to know who's making decisions locally. They're making the most impact on your day in and day out life and your week in and week out educational experience for your kiddos. Um, and will be the resource for you as a homeschool parent too, as the local folks. Um, and so yeah, I just so it's time to kind of pull our attention away from DC and really be focusing personally what I think we need to be focusing on what's happening at home, who's making the decisions at home. Get involved
Mhm.
with your school boards, get involved with your school site councils or
Mhm.
whoever is making decisions at your local level, because that's going to make the biggest difference for your kid.
Mhm. Well, that's like so any kind of politics. So I talk about politics a lot because politics is education. It just is. Plus, I'm a social studies and civics teacher, and I loves it. So it's like a real life drama all the time. But when people complain about, excuse me, when people complain about laws and the encroachment of government into our lives and all of this stuff, they almost exclusively talk about the federal government.
Which
And
I mean, it's
I
like,
always
gosh,
tell
there's
them,
so
I'm
many more
like,
people involved here.
your local sheriff has more input on your everyday life than anyone else pretty much. Your local sheriff, for those of you who don't know, this is in all 50 states. This is a nationwide thing. That's why sheriffs are elected. When you elect your sheriff,
Big
they are
deal.
responsible for upholding the constitution of your state and the federal government in their jurisdiction. If something goes against your state or the federal constitution, they are duty bound to not do it, which is why you see sheriffs like what's his name, Joe something or another in what is it, Arizona or Texas, where he just doesn't do like pretty much anything that the federal government tells him to because he's like, show me in the Constitution where it says to do that. Okay, screw off. Like that. It is so important to understand the role of your local government
Yeah,
in general
yeah.
because we're set up in the United States very differently than most countries in the world. We're set up a bottom roughly. This is a gross gross opposite of
Oversimplification.
thank you. Yes, I'm sick and this is impromptu. I mean, this is a gross oversimplification, but we are essentially set up as a bottom up system, right? Local government has the most impact on your daily life. Then it's county or parish government, then it's your state government, then it's the federal government. The federal government is only there to deal with interstate issues, theoretically,
And
and to make sure,
international issues.
and international. Yeah,
Yeah.
interstate. So interstate
Hmm.
commerce, right? So whenever a trucker goes from Wyoming to Colorado, whenever they cross that state line, that is governed by federal regulations, right? The federal DOT.
Right. And
And
so like
yeah,
how do they get
you
involved
get
with
my point. Go for
education?
it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And how they get involved with education is like, the states were all trying to do different things, and and it wasn't working, right?
Hmm.
And um so the intention was to try to like, let's find what's working, let's help the states kind of rise all tides, right? So rise the tide, so right, we rise all ships.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think it's really important for folks to really learn and dig into, what's required at the local level, what's required at the state level, and then the federal level, because we say, oh, there's too much testing, we have to fix the testing that's required by the federal government.
Hmm.
And that is not the majority of the testing that's actually happening in classrooms.
Hmm.
And to make changes there will not have a major impact on in reducing testing. Um, it's at the local level we have to make change. So yeah, yeah. I hope that answers the question. Like,
Yes, it does. The importance of local stuff and understanding the nesting dolls, which I really love that analogy.
well, and it helps, to give permission for people to investigate where do the rules and regulations actually come from.
Mhm.
Um, and and the best way to do that is go to source document. Don't just ask somebody; they won't always know, even if they have a job in a school or even a district. They don't always know where the rules come from. They just
Mhm.
know that's how they've always done it. Um, so and listen, and as painful as it can be, guys, listen to the school board meetings at your local, school district, or and the state board meetings. Those are public too. A lot of big decisions get made in those meetings
Mhm.
that impact years of students coming through the system,
Right. And that's on the state level, right?
and also on the local level.
Okay.
Yes, school district boards. um,
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I always try to get through to people is the every time we try something out, right? Every time we test something,
it's an experiment, baby. This is all a
that's
big
a kid's
experiment.
life and they will never get it back.
Yeah,
Right? Which
yeah.
is why Mary is working so hard from the inside and I'm working so hard from the outside to try to help kids in the immediate. Because while the adults, and this is one of the things I love about you, you always say adult issues, adults dealing with adult issues,
Yeah.
and the kids get caught in the middle.
Yep.
I love the way that you put that because I say a lot of cuss words when I explain that. So you make it very user friendly, very family friendly because COVID is a great example for me, right? The teachers, we won't go back to school unless XYZ political happens from the teachers' unions. That had literally nothing to do with students and their academic performance and their success in life.
We also had a lot of people that were dealing with something that they could have never imagined would ever happen.
Mhm.
And I know we got tired of hearing unprecedented times, but
It did
um
get a little old.
it did, but um I was working with state departments of education. I was working with during when COVID happened. Just a little context from where I was at the time. I was working as a vendor with 6 states across the nation directly, and trying to help answer their questions and address things as they came up. And we were all caught off guard, and so um, a little, people were making the decisions based off of what information they had. um, but we're always doing that, and I think it's time to take a step back and go, okay, well, this isn't the way we want to do things, so how could we improve them? And I think the first step is to really understanding like what you're dealing with. um, Whenever you hear somebody just um, say, calling like, oh, these tests are child abuse, it's like, now we got to look at the adult behaviors around this, and
Mhm.
stop minimizing real child abuse
Mhm.
with this, kind of um, inflammatory over exaggeration of what is inappropriate adult behavior
Mhm.
around something that could provide so much valuable information if we put it back in its place.
Mhm.
And I am talking about assessments there, put it back in its place.
Mhm.
So um, I could talk to you for hours, Katie. I am so grateful to you for getting hopping on the line tonight with a moment's notice. And I hope that the 3 people that asked this
Yeah.
question in 3 different ways got the answer, or at least have something to think about. And And I know got a little bit more than they bargained for, but with
Sorry,
that,
that was my
Katie,
fault. That was completely my fault.
it's all good. I just thank you so much. I hope you feel better. Anybody with us at this point, you've gone this long. I hope this was useful. If you're looking for anything homeschool related, please check out Katie Jones One Dash Room Education. And if you're looking for
Thanks.
anything assessment related, I do contribute some blog posts to Katie that's specifically for homeschool. Like, how do we assess as a process, right?
I
Our
call them
kiddos.
Testing Tuesday articles.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Yeah. Got a few in the hopper for you guys that are really good. But if you have any other assessment related things and interested in my compassionate assessment framework or my compassionate assessment work,
Mhm.
come check it out at metamured.com. That's METIMURED.com. Metamure means to measure in Latin. So super geeky all the way through. But
That's
thank
just
you.
you, though. That's okay.
That's me. So
And
thank you. Thank you so much.
no problem. And I also want to say that if you have any questions about assessment, and assessment is not just it's not just standardized state or federal testing. It is you and I talked about play-based assessment.
Yes.
And I actually just did that with my son today. He super loves Bob Ross
Yay.
now. I introduced him to Bob Ross last week. And the joy of painting. And he sat and he painted with Bob Ross today, and it was hilarious. It was
So
amazing to watch his first painting while he was sitting there, and he was sitting there and he was doing it, and he was looking up and he was doing it and he was looking up. So the first one is just like a whole bunch of colors mixed together, and then they got more and more sophisticated as
I
it went
love
on.
it.
And I was like, holy crap. Not only is he learning about like color theory and blending colors
Yeah.
and all of that stuff, and then
Shapes and depth and
yeah.
perspective
Oh
and
my god,
yes.
amazing. And he's also learning his fine and gross motor skills. He's
Mm-hmm.
practicing those,
Mm-hmm.
which he needs to work on. Um,
And perseverance.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
And storytelling,
Yes.
English language arts, basics for that. Yeah, so play-based assessment, one of the number one things that I suggest my son will be 4 at the end of this month. So he's still 3, but amazing.
And guess what? Play-based assessment, it gets relegated to that early learning space of like our 4, 5, 6, 7 year olds,
Mhm.
and then it kind of drops off. And guess what? Adults like to play too.
Oh my
And
gosh,
and
everybody wants
it's
stickers.
all ages love to play. And when you're in
Mhm,
a sense of play and discovery, you are more likely to learn from that experience too.
mhm,
So no, I love writing about how do we measure these invisible cognitive processes, right? So that we can encourage people's growth, encourage people's exploration of the world, and
mhm,
keep them excited about learning because it's the most beautiful thing. And that's why we're here. That's what I believe. I believe we're here for that, to learn and to grow. And, I just, we're really hampering a major tool in our quiver. So
mhm.
that's right? I always get
Yeah,
it
that's
wrong.
right.
The arrows are in the quiver. My
Arrows are in the quiver, but it's
husband
good
always
enough.
connects, always corrects me on
It's
this.
all
But
good.
yeah, we're hampering ourselves by eliminating this by using it.
Mhm.
Well, I guess the analogy is bad because that is a weapon, but because we are using this tool that's so useful and using it as a
Well,
weapon.
no,
So
that's something that I always so secondary is 7 through 12. I've taught 6 through 12 and up. I've also worked with college students, and just getting them up out of their seat and moving and creating some sort of game, right? Like I was talking about earlier, a review game or something like that that acts as an assessment to see how you need to tweak stuff before the actual like exam graded
hmm
exam.
hmm
So where you need to work on your presentations as a teacher, that's the feedback you should be getting from those. How you need to work on stuff, not necessarily how your students
yes,
are doing. And
because
then
if they haven't learned it, you haven't taught it.
right,
Who's the
exactly.
responsible unit here, right? Like it's kind of getting ourselves back to, where does the responsibility lie?
Mhm.
Um, And yes, the students are responsible too for their own
Mhm.
learning if we can give them the tools to be and responsible, to take responsibility if they know where they're going.
Absolutely.
Gamifying progress is huge, because then students can see visually like where their progress is, you know,
Mhm.
if they're progressing toward the goal.
Mhm.
And all of this is assessment as a process, and when it's used as that growth focused tool.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to give your students the tools that they need for their foundational for their foundational skills to be successful not only in their academic career but also in their life and their professional careers, I am working on a educational foundations set of courses. The first one is out now. It's on note taking. It's called Note Taking 101. And I go over the eight main, most popular um, note taking styles. And then at the end, I teach you how to create your own note taking method and when to apply it and how to adapt as you grow and your environments change. So it's great for, I've implemented it with everyone from fourth graders up through presidents and CEOs of multi-million dollar international corporations. Yes, I do that too. That it's amazing, it's great, and now it's available to you only in the one room classroom, which is included in the Foundations for Homeschool Mastery coaching program. You get 12-week access to that if you want to see a little behind the scenes before you buy in. But it will also include basics of study skills and research methodology. So, how you can go and find those standards that are required and how you
Mhm.
actually go through the paperwork to find what's actually required by what section, by what level of government, and all that stuff. I'll teach you how to do that. Plus, write a bomb paper. Yeah, I just said that. Bomb paper.
A ball paper. Love it. Uh,
So, yeah, all of that
love it.
stuff will be available. It's in the works. Plus, we have the um, project-based learning
Hmm.
course, which I'm still working on uploading. I'm so sorry about that. Which is done by Mary and our lovely friend Cynthia.
Yeah, it's Cynthia Elm's work. She's phenomenal. And she has been teaching homeschool and also in public school forums. So she's an amazing teacher. And so, yeah, that's really her work. I've just kind of cheered her on along the way. But yeah, the project based learning work is out of professional project management and bridging those two worlds.
Mhm.
It's really fun, really exciting, and super, super useful.
Absolutely. It's just one more way to assess your students and your progress as an educator,
Yeah.
because that's what it's all about. We have to
Yeah.
measure ourselves too. So tell people where to find you if they don't know already.
Yeah, they can find me on LinkedIn, on Facebook right now. We'll be coming to X. We'll be coming to YouTube soon. Oh gosh, so much going on. But metamured.com is my website, the company website, metimured.com. And you can find our page on LinkedIn, Metamure Ed, or on Facebook, Metamure Ed as well there. So if you want to join our Compassionate Assessment Network, it's a private Facebook group where we just talk about how to shift how we're using assessments as a process, and also working toward a more compassionate approach to assessing student learning and encouraging growth. If you look me up on Facebook or look up Metamure Ed on Facebook, you'll be able to find how to get into the private group. And I'll be answering questions every Tuesday. Ask me anything assessment. So looking
I
forward
love
to
it.
that.
So it really is testing Tuesdays.
It is testing Tuesdays. But it's more than just testing. That's why I didn't call it
Yeah,
that.
I know. It was just catchy.
Yeah.
Marketing,
You
Mary.
gotta
Marketing.
love the alliteration. You gotta
Yes,
love
I
it.
really
So,
do love a good alliteration. It's my thing. Unless it's S's, then I can't say
well,
it.
well, I don't know if you ever noticed, I have a little bit of a lisp.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
They're hard.
So,
Look, Katie, as always, this is so great. Thank you so much,
No problem.
and have a great rest of your night. And I hope we'll talk again soon. I
Absolutely. You
so
know we
great
will.
seeing you in person. Just like what was that 2 weeks ago now
I
with the
know.
holiday and everything.
It
I
was
feel like it
great.
was just last week, but it wasn't. So
I know.
it was so
My
great.
my blister on my heels almost healed up.
Gosh, it's the worst.
That's a story for another time. Anyway, if you enjoyed this live stream or if you're watching it as a replay, thank you. I appreciate you, and so does Mary. Uh, if you enjoy the content that One Room Education puts out, feel free to head over to one-roomeducation.com. That's the word one, ONE-roomeducation.com. You can sign up for our weekly newsletters. And we also have a ton of blog and written content. That's the educating on education side of it. And then we also have a ridiculous number of homeschooler resources that are getting ready to come out. I've got some amazing stuff in the pipeline so far as physical movements, kinesiology, herbalism, health and wellness, math and sciences. I'm still looking for an ELA person. If anyone's interested in creating ELA content for One Room Education, send me a message on our contact page. Um, yeah, you can follow us on X, Instagram, and TikTok at one room underscore ed, and on Facebook, Rumble, and YouTube at One Room Education, all one word. With that, thank you so much for joining us for this impromptu live. I'm so glad we were able to do this for you, Mary.
Thank you.
No problem. And I will see you guys next time as we continue to discuss the state of education. Have a great night, everybody.
Bye.
Oh, I was not sure I was going to make it through that.
Okay, dude, I'm at 8%.